Hey, everybody, welcome to Think Business. Looking forward to talking to Dr. Deanne De Vries. Dr. Deanne, it's great to connect with you. I know you are in Amsterdam right now, and it's 6 p.m. there, and you're doing some really cool things, and I'm excited to talk with you. So thanks for being on the show. You have a very cool business. You take the guesswork out of doing business in Africa,
Mhm.
and you not only illustrate why now is the time to invest in what you call in African, the can-do continent, and you tap
Yep.
into your 30 years of experience of on-the-ground experience to paint a picture of realities on the ground that challenge conventional wisdom and change the way investors and companies view the continent of Africa and the diversity of opportunities for businesses of all industries. And so
Yep.
we before we went live, you were quickly telling me that you were there as a child, and I said, well, pause. I don't want you to have to repeat yourself. So what's your backstory of how I always love hearing people's backstory.
Yep.
What is your backstory of how this came to become a business?
So I was 6 years old when I heard that children in Africa oftentimes had a challenge going to school and they didn't have access to libraries, which is something that every Saturday morning my parents would take us to the libraries. So as a 6-year-old, I declared full of confidence to my parents that one day I was moving to Africa so I could teach kids to read and write. And 18 years later, that's exactly what I did. And as I say, once you get Africa in your blood, it doesn't leave.
Yeah, but let's talk about that moment for a minute. I knew when I was 18 years old that I wanted to be a business coach. My dad
Mhm.
gave me a set of tapes. That's by Brian Tracy, The Psychology of Success. I put it on my ears. I
Yep.
knew I wanted to write books and inspire people, and business just kind of intuitively came easily to me. I
Mhm.
studied every day, and my path to become a business coach. I did a couple of things along the way. Started a company, sold it, got into commercial real estate, and then started it,
Yeah.
but I knew at 18. And so and it was just something that I felt in my being. I
Mhm.
just loved it. So now rewind, even further. How did you know at 6 years old? I mean, that is quite an old soul way of feeling and thinking at that age.
Yeah, it is. I loved reading, and growing up, my father was an immigrant to the United States. My mother was born there, but both her parents had immigrated. So education, reading was something that was instilled in me from a young age. And to me, it was like you could learn so much about the world. Like my dad would say, remember, he would come home and I'd be reading the World Book Encyclopedia. Like, how nerdy is that? And so, but I loved it because I got to learn so much. I got to travel through books and stuff. And so when I heard that there was part of the world, I don't even know if 6 years old I knew where Africa was, I don't know. But when I heard that there were kids that didn't have that opportunity, to me, I was just like, "No, I want them to have the same fun that I'm having." And so when I had that opportunity 18 years later, I literally quit my job on Wall Street and moved to Kenya, and that's what I started doing, working not just with children. I worked a lot with high school and university age girls, encouraging them to get an education and finish it. And I worked
Yeah.
a lot with women that had businesses, which is what today we call, the SMEs. So, in
Yeah.
mentoring them.
So amazing. It's so amazing. I mean, reading, reading and listening to books has been a huge piece of my growth. And
Hmm.
I have learned way more through reading and audible.com
Hmm.
than I did scholastically, for sure. Not that
Hmm.
I didn't try hard, but
Yeah.
reading, I could choose my own books. I could choose what I needed to learn. And just talk a little bit about all the information you can get for 4.95 to 19.95. You can get a because I think of it the same way you did. It's like you can get a lifetime of knowledge of somebody else's journey,
Yeah.
and in just a couple hours.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I love there was a line in your book where you wrote about how it's second nature for you to figure out different ways to learn.
Yeah,
And I think that that's so important is that you learn by seeing, you learn by experience, you learn by watching, you learn by
right.
sitting in a classroom. In another one of my books, I interviewed Africa's heads of state, and they all talked about the importance of education because of you learn to think and analyze and debate, and. But what it does is it opens your eyes to different possibilities, and
Yeah,
it's not a question definition of right or wrong. And
Right.
that's the coolest thing about it is you're given options and you're just like, oh, okay, I wonder if that works for me. Oh, well,
Correct.
why did they do that? And it's
Right.
just that curiosity, which is so key to opening yourself up to learning and
Yeah.
growing.
Yeah, I love it. Let's talk about curiosity for a minute because I'm curious about something because you knew at such a young age. I believe in many cases, not all, but in many cases, we teach our pain, right? The
Mhm.
people that are at the highest frequency, sometimes or highest vibration, in ways we teach our pain. And so, are you teaching your pain? And if so, how did you know it at 6 years old?
That's a good question. I haven't looked at it that way. So I'll be
Yeah,
honest, I promptly forgot about it. And it wasn't until, like I said, 18 years later when I had an opportunity that my mom actually reminded me of what I said. But one of the things that was very important for me growing up is communication. And
yeah,
so I studied languages. I studied French. I was the first person at my high school. They're just like, can you study three languages at the same time? And I'm like, yes, I can. And thankfully, my Spanish teacher backed me up. And then my senior year, I went to junior college because the high school didn't have French and German at the higher levels. So I was doing French, German, Spanish, and English. Plus, at home, we spoke English and Dutch. And so that was already, I forgot
so
what the
cool.
five or six languages. And so to me, it was very important to be able to communicate to people because how are you going to understand somebody if you can't ask questions, if you can't
Yeah.
listen, you can't hear their point of view?
I always say the person who asks the questions controls the conversation in the sense
Hmm.
of, if you want to learn, you learn by ask. I work with I'm a business coach. I work with solopreneurs to Fortune companies, everything in between. And I work with C-level execs and leaders and managers and salespeople.
Yeah.
But when it comes to sales, and in a way, everybody's in sales. People say, "Oh, I don't want to sound salesy. I don't want to sound sales." I always say to them, "Well, then just ask questions."
Yeah.
You'll never sound
Yeah.
salesy if you ask questions. And so I love that comment. Let's talk about you. You go to Africa, you are teaching children and high school children how to read and write. But now we're morphing into, um, a book of yours, Africa Open for Business. And
Mhm.
so how did you then morph into saying, okay, take us through the journey of moving into this piece.
Yeah. So one of the things that I was doing is I was working with women, some of whom were illiterate, but that had businesses. And so, and I didn't even know about mentoring really. I mean, we're talking, this is 30 years ago. And so just as an aside to teaching them literacy, we would talk about business. And I had been working on Wall Street. I'd been working in the Netherlands and then in the United States for a global company. And so I had lots of practical experience and I would just tell stories or suggest this or suggest that, and it would help them. And so pretty soon it became not just a class for literacy, but a class on how they could grow their business, whether it
Yeah,
was a hairdressing salon or, braiding hair or marketing, things like that.
I love it. And talk to me what you learned about mentoring. And now I have two questions actually. What did you learn about mentoring? And then what did you learn from your mentees?
So, oh gosh, I learn more from my mentees, I'm sure, than
Yeah,
they learned from me. And that's the thing I always tell people when they want to go to Africa and they're thinking, yeah, we're going to go save them. And I'm like, actually, if you will go with an open mind, you're going to learn a whole lot more.
right. They may save you.
Yeah,
Yeah,
seriously.
yeah,
Their gratitude and just their eagerness to learn, their curiosity, their acceptance is just really very humbling, honestly.
yeah,
And so, what I learned about mentoring is that it's so much just about storytelling. And we can think, oh, I have to have a certain expertise. But yet, there's things that you've done in your life that others can benefit from. There's mistakes that you've made that when you share, other people can learn from them and then not make those. They'll make their own mistakes, of course. And so it's exciting because you actually see somebody progress in their journey, and you're just like, oh wow, and then they in turn pass that on to somebody else, and it's like that snowball effect that just ripples on, and it's just super inspiring.
yeah. I love that. Let's talk about gratitude. I think I work a lot of times with people about, how to get centered. And I find not only do I teach it, but I do it. And I find when I can I write in a gratitude journal every morning. it and I find myself through the day as I kind of, lose that middle ground. Gratitude always brings me back. And
Hmm.
so talk about gratitude and how um and the energy that they give their gratitude, as you were talking about earlier.
So I think too often in, I'll call it the Western side of the world, we focus on what we don't have. And you focus on what others have and you think you should have. In Africa, it's very different. It's much more communal. It's much more about what you have and sharing it. So, for example, when somebody makes money, it's not just for them, it's to help a sister, a cousin, a nephew, somebody in your neighborhood who needs an operation. And for example, in the United States, if there's not strawberries 365 days of the year in the grocery store, we're like, what happened?
Right.
There it was like, depending on the time of year, you would have mangoes or apples or bananas or, and you really appreciate it because it was in season. And oh my gosh,
Yeah.
it tasted amazing.
Yeah.
And so, just going through life focused on the here and now, the present, rather than on what you don't have
Yeah.
is also just a lot funner and nicer and more
Yeah.
chilled way to live because
Yeah.
you're focused on enjoying what you have rather than complaining and being all miserable because of what you don't have and think you need, which actually
Right.
when you get it, you probably realize you don't need it anyway.
Yeah. Let's talk about now how people can invest in Africa, right? That
Mhm.
was beautiful. Thank you for sharing that, by the way. But what can people do if they do? How do you invest in Africa?
So you invest in Africa like anywhere else in the world, in that, today 17% of the world lives in Africa. And you know what? Just like you and me, they get up in the morning, they brush their teeth, take the kids to school, prepare breakfast, lunch, et cetera. So really anything that you have, any product or any service is something that could be applicable there. But just like investing in the state or the city next door, investing in Africa is more than just focused on your own bottom line. It's also focused on how you can help the community, how you can make their life a better place.
Yeah.
And so I always talk about it through, I like keeping things simple, ABCs.
Hmm.
And so it's just, I sit down with people and companies and ask them, say, what's your appetite? Like, do you just want to put your finger in there? You want an appetizer? You're like, I'm ready. I'm going to invest. I want a full course meal. I want that 5-star, review, et cetera. Or are you somebody that's like, oh, I just want to try it. I want to maybe find somebody to sell my product and see if it'll work. Because that's really going to determine then how much bandwidth you need,
Yeah.
and how you're going to enter a market and where you're going to enter a market.
Yeah.
It differs if you're somebody who is all in or this is your first attempt at looking at Africa.
Yeah. I love it. I love it. All right. Quick speed round. You ready?
Okay.
All
Yes.
right. Um, a book that's had the biggest impact on you.
The Bible.
Okay. That's a popular one. Best piece of wisdom you've ever received.
An Ethiopian proverb that says there's no better witnesses than your own eyes.
I love it. Finish this sentence. One thing everybody can do to get grounded and get to gratitude faster is.
Be curious.
All right. I like it. Tell everybody where they can learn more about you, where they can connect with you, and learn more about investing in Africa.
Yep. They can find me on my website, drdeannedevries.com. And my social media handles are at drdeannedevries.com as well. And my books are on Amazon.
I love it. I appreciate you taking time, Dr. Deanne, to be on the show. Think community. I love doing this podcast as a business coach. I work with successful people, get them unstuck, and the guests on these shows always bring something to get you unstuck. And you shared a lot today about your company and things that I think are really powerful. I'll extract one thing, which is the power of gratitude. No matter how much money you have or don't have, it's free for all of us. And it
Yep.
just requires us to take the time and the moments to just say it or write it or think
Mm-hmm.
it and feel it. So
Yep.
I appreciate you and everything that you're doing. It's great to see somebody who's in alignment with their soul and on the path of what they love to do and
Mm-hmm.
inspiring and helping so many other people. So thank you for that. Think community, a good thing for all of us to think about is, are we on the right path that we want to be on? Are we inspiring others? And are we doing what we are meant to be doing? So, which I think you
Agreed.
share, You know, it really comes through everything that you do, Doctor. All right. Give your website one more time.
DrDeanneDeVries.com.
All right. And you can reach me at jondwoskin.com. Think community. Thanks so much.
Thanks,
Doctor,
Jon.
thank you so much. That was awesome. Appreciate it. All the best
Thank
to
you.
you.